Hey, it's Michelle with Gardening with the Landscape Connection. Welcome to my channel and today's episode, which will be all about hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are some of the easiest shrubs to grow. And so if you've never grown one, come along with us today and learn about some of the different ones that are out there. And we'll also discuss maybe some of the problems that people are having with them. And I think that we'll go over probably 4 of the most common questions that we get asked here in the garden center. One being, what kind of hydrangea do I have? And they're not sure how to identify what they have at home because maybe they planted it 2 or 3 years ago. They have no idea what it is, or they inherited it when they moved into their home, or they don't know why they're not getting flowers on their hydrangea. So we'll talk about that as well. People also want to know, how do I change the color of the hydrangeas? And can you change the color on all hydrangeas? And last but not least, they want to know which one to plant in their yard. So we help guide them through all the different ones that are out there and help them pick the one that's just right for them. So I'm hoping that today's episode will take you through that as well. I personally love hydrangeas. I have them growing all over my yard. I have them growing at the garden center, and we have quite the collection here available for people to come and purchase, and I love to use them when I'm doing landscape design. They have a super long bloom time, great structure, and for the most part, they're very easy to grow. There are 5 categories of hydrangeas. The first one we have are the PG hydrangeas, or the Panicle or Paniculata. They're called all 3 things, so whatever you've learned to call them, that's what they're called. Then there is the smooth hydrangea. These are native to North America. They're your Annabells. There is the big leaf hydrangea, and then we have the mountain hydrangea. Now the mountain hydrangea is a Seretts hydrangea, and then there's the Oakleaf hydrangea, which also is native to North America. So within those 5 categories, we're going to talk about some of the different characteristics of each of them. We'll start with the Paniculata hydrangeas. Proven Winners probably has the largest variety of those out there, so I did link their website below so you can go check out all the different varieties. Paniculata hydrangeas grow in zone 3 through 8. Now, if you're in zone 3, 4, and 5, you probably can grow these in full sun and have great success with that. If you're in zone 6, 7, and 8, 6 probably goes either way, but depending on where you plant it, they probably need a little more protection from the hot afternoon sun, and you might experience some scorching on the leaves if they're getting all that sun. But I do think that the Paniculatas are some of the easiest to grow, and they are absolutely gorgeous. And they come in all different kinds of sizes. So you can get like a limelight, which is probably the #1 selling hydrangea in the world, that gets, 6, 7, 8 feet tall and probably 6 feet wide, to like a little firelight tidbit that might get 2.5, 3 feet by 2.5, 3 feet. So all different kinds of sizes, and you can certainly find one that's going to fit the needs of what you're looking for in your landscape. Now, all of these hydrangeas bloom on new wood, so if you're going to be pruning them, you prune them in late winter or early spring when they're dormant. And you take off the top third of the shrub, and you're basically cutting all the flowers off. Now, what I love about them as well is the flowers dry fantastic. They're great for crafts. They're great for dried products. I use them in my winter pots. I use them inside. Oh, they're just endless uses for these hydrangeas, and I love this category. So if you're looking for a hydrangea to try, this might be a category to check out. These are my quick fires, and so as you can see, it's got more of an open lace flower on here. Absolutely gorgeous. And as these age, they will turn pink. And so I have 5 of these in a row, and then on either ends of these, it's like a big arc behind my pergola, I have the limelight hydrangeas. Now these are just now starting to bloom, and as you can see, when the flowers are closed, they're like this lime green. And then see, when they first start to open, they're lime green, but then as they age, they turn this beautiful white. Can you see that? All right, then they go from white and they start to turn pink. Now, if you're going to grow a quick fire or a limelight, you better give them plenty of space, because these can get upwards of 7, 8 feet high and probably 5 to 6 feet wide. So you need to make sure you give them room. If you don't have that much room, plant a smaller cultivar. They have the little limes, which don't get as big. They get like maybe 5 or 6 feet high and 4 to 5 feet wide. So there's a smaller cultivar of the limelight. They also have the limelight prime, which was just introduced, and that only gets about 5 by 5. So a nice hydrangea that you can tuck into the landscape. Also, the quick fires, there are quick fires, there are little quick fires, there are I think it's called Tiny Quickfire that was introduced this year. That's small, like 2x2. And then there's the Quickfire Fab, which kind of has the same characteristics of a limelight as far as like the flower is shaped like a panicle, but they don't get as big and they bloom a month earlier than all the other hydrangeas, just like the Quickfires do, thus their name. So I love the Quickfire family of hydrangeas. I love this cultivar. Okay, the next one I want to talk about are smooth hydrangeas. So smooth hydrangeas basically grow in zone 3 through 8 as well. These are ones that are going to grow in full sun, and I found that no matter what zone you're in, if they're in full sun, they're going to need supplemental water. And these are the ones that when they are thirsty, they will tell you, because they kind of droop. The other thing is when they get wet, these stems on the old-fashioned Annabells, which are the natives, they'll droop as well. But Proven Winners has done a lot of development with the Annabells, and they created the series of Incrediballs. Now the Incrediballs take everything about Annabells and make it so much better. I love Incrediballs. Now I've had these here for a long time, like 10 years, and I don't think when I first planted these, the Incrediballs were out. Maybe they were, but I didn't know about them. So I planted Annabells because I love them, but I don't like the drooping part of them. But what I love about the Incrediballs is they're designed to have stronger stems, so they stand up better, and the flowers on them are ginormous. They'll grow in sun or shade. Now what I found about the ones that I grow in the shade is they never get as big as you want them to. They'll get flowers on them, but the flowers are a little bit smaller and more sparse. I have one at my house growing in the shade, and it's not as big as one would be if I planted it in full sun. Now I have found that I do have to supplement the water on them even when I get them established, and I'm okay with that. But if that's not something you want to fuss with, this may not be the hydrangea for you. But these flowers dry incredibly well. They make great wreaths. They do well in dried flower products or crafts or things like that, whatever you want to do, and I just love that about them. Now when these flowers are done, they start to turn brown, so if you want to get them when they're like this and dry them, you want to pick them when they're white. The Incrediball comes in white, but it also comes in a blush, and this year they introduced a wee white, which is like this it gets like 2x2. It's like the perfect size to tuck somewhere in the landscape, and I planted 2 of them over at my house, and I tucked them right in. It was perfect, and I loved it. And I love Annabells, and I think that they are easy to grow. You really don't have blooming problems with these. I'd say the #1 complaint I get is when you plant the old-fashioned Annabells is when they're wet, they droop, or the stems aren't as strong as the Incrediball stems. So if this is a cultivar you'd like to try, go for it, because I think they're fabulous. The other thing to note about your smooth leaf hydrangeas is that they do bloom on new wood, and what that means is they're going to grow on all the wood that came up this year. Because they're blooming on new wood, you can cut them to the ground every year to do your cleanup. Okay, the only other thing I would say with these that you might have problems with is deer. So deer do like to nibble on the blossoms of your hydrangeas. So if you have deer pressure, that might be something that you're going to have to put down a repellent or something to keep them away. And you can tell it's deer damage because you're going to see ripping of the leaves. They're going to look more like ragged edges. They like tear the leaves off. And so a lot of times they're grazers, though. They won't typically eat all the buds off of one. They'll eat like 2 or 3 and then move on to the next one, and eat 2 or 3 and then move on to the next one and eat 2 or 3. Look at the size of that bloom. Here's my hand. It is bigger than my hand. So this is a firelight. Isn't that great? I mean, I love the shape of this flower. I love the look of this flower. Absolutely gorgeous. Look how big that is. Now remember, they get 6 to 8 feet tall and 4 to 5 feet wide. And these are still in their cans. Look at this. Oh my goodness. There's my hand. Whoa, gorgeous. So all the flowers are a little bit different. So this one, as you see, it's white, and then it starts to age to that pink, but it's got more of that open, airy flower look like a Quickfire, but it's not. It's a pinky winky, and it's got more of that conical shape on the flower. See, like a limelight does. They're all so different. It's so awesome. Check this one out. This is the Quickfire Fab. Huh? Oh my gosh. I love that. Look how big these are, and they're in their cans. And see, they're too heavy for the cans. They're leaning over. They won't do that once they're in the ground because they're going to have more of a structure to build off of once you get them in the ground. But in the pots, when they're carrying that kind of weight, oh, they're kind of flopping over a little bit. But look at how big that flower is. Oh my goodness. I love this. These are new to me this year, so I'll be planting a couple of these. I can't wait. So these are little quick fires growing at my house, and as you can see, this one is about 5 by 5. Yeah, that's about right. And then this one tears down to about 4 by 4 and then about 3 by 3. Now the reason they're tiered up like that, normally they're all the same height, is I had to prune these two back really far this year because see, they're on the edge of my driveway. I hit them with the plow. So they had quite a bit of plow damage and I had to cut them almost back to the ground. But look, they recovered and they look great. I actually did a video back in, I don't know, I think it was March, and it was on winter pruning, and these were some of the shrubs that I pruned, and you saw how severe they were, so I'll link that down below. You can check it out. There are serious pollinators all over this thing, and as you can see, it's already starting to turn pink. In that same video, you saw me severely prune back this limelight, which last year, all of these bottom branches were totally weighted down and falling on the ground, and I'm hoping that by pruning it back as far as I did back in March, that I strengthened some of this bottom branching, but we've got some good structure going on up here and some great blooms. This one here is getting morning sun until about, I'd say, noon, and the ones down at the end probably get a little bit more sun than this one. It's closer to the tree, and I have these planted. There is a big maple tree right there, and the sun rises over there. So I planted them here in the hopes of creating like this little hedge. This is the little lime fruit punch, and when I grew them last year, they were super tiny. They didn't have any flowers on them even at the end of the year, and so this spring they looked pretty pathetic. I fertilized them and I was like, I hope they do well here, or I might have to move them to give them more sun, but they're not as big as I want them, but they've still got time to grow. They're, you know, I planted them in I think August of last year, so they're not even a year old, and they're full of flowers. So I love these. It's like this little mini version, but it gets this really, really dark fruit punch red, pink color on them as they age. So I can't wait to see that happen. This is an oak leaf hydrangea that I have growing at my house. It's called Ruby Slippers, and it's gonna grow 3 to 4 feet tall, and it's gonna grow 4 to 5 feet wide. I have this one growing in pretty much all shade. It gets a little bit of sun on the edges, and as you can see here, see, there's the leaves starting to change color, and it's got that beautiful oak shaped leaf on there. See, they're pretty big. Isn't that great? All right, now this is another oak leaf hydrangea that I have growing, and this one didn't get any flowers this year, but it's only 2 years old. And oak leaf hydrangeas sometimes can take 3 to 5 years to give you the flowers while it's developing its roots, developing its structure. I did go in and clip it down just a little bit, a couple branches here and there, because I'm trying to like create the form that I want it to look. Hopefully we'll get flowers on it next year in year 3. Now the Alice hydrangea gets white flowers. Again, the leaves are going to turn red in the fall, but this one can get anywhere from 5 to 8 feet high and 5 to 6 feet wide. So this is a fairly large hydrangea. If they're not flowering, that might be a reason why, and or maybe you pruned it at the wrong time, because remember, you only want to prune it in early spring, dead, diseased, or dying branches. Blooms on old wood. Okay, so this is an example of an incredible planted in the shade. It gets only dappled sun, so it probably needs more sun, but I'm okay with it here. I think it looks okay. It could get a lot bigger if I gave it more sun, but it's still got really big flowers. But the thing with the flowers is, see, they're green. They're not white. They're not that intense white. I'm hoping that they turn white, but I don't remember if they do or they don't. But right now, today, it's the end of July, and these are green, and I don't know, I'm okay with that. The plant itself is very healthy, so I'll take it. So we have talked about smooth hydrangeas, which are your Annabelle series. We've talked about the oak leaf hydrangeas, and we've talked about the paniculatas or the panicle hydrangeas. So this next one I want to talk about is in the smooth leaf, big leaf family, but it is a mountain hydrangea, and it's called a serrata. And this is from Proven Winners. This one is called Tough Stuff. It's called Aha. Isn't that a beautiful flower? So it's got kind of that open, airy lace leaf or lace cap flower on it. And you can tell the difference between this one and a big leaf hydrangea because the leaves are smaller And typically the plant is smaller too. So this one is going to top out maybe at 24 inches, 24 inches wide. They do bloom on old wood, so you don't prune them back. And the other thing that can happen with these is I do find that in zone 5 especially, maybe zone 6 too, they really don't want to be in anything colder than -5 in the winter. And here, because of zone 5, we can get up to -20. So I find that I do have to wrap these in burlap over the winter to protect them, or what happens is it freezes off all my flowers, and that might be why you're not getting flowers. The other thing that can happen is once it's like 15 degrees all the time, you can unwrap them. But if we get a really super cold snap after those buds start to swell, then you can lose your flowers that way too. So there could be a lot of reasons why you're not getting flowers on this. And the biggest one is if you know a frost is coming after the bud starts to swell, get out there and cover it up. The other thing is I don't think that these do well like out in the open. I think you do have to have a protected area. This is along the wall on the south side of my house, and I do have trees on the other side of the sidewalk, so that offers protection as well. Now, the other thing that can happen with all of your hydrangeas is if you over fertilize with too much nitrogen, you can push growth, and it's going to push big, beautiful green leaves and no flowers if you over fertilize with too much nitrogen. So I'll show you the fertilizer that I use in just a second. Here's the last one we're going to talk about, and this is a big leaf hydrangea. Kind of looks like that Seretta that we just talked about, right? Well, if you were to pinch a leaf off of this one, see how big the leaf is? And then I went and pinched a leaf off of the Seretta. See how small that one is? So usually the great big leaves, that's how you know you have a big leaf hydrangea. It's different than a smooth hydrangea because those have smaller leaves. It's got the veining and it's got that serrated edge on there, and that's how you can tell the difference. And then if you have a Seretta, their leaves are a lot smaller. Like this was the biggest leaf on the Seretta. This was like one of the bigger leaves on the smooth leaf. So that's how I can tell the difference between the two. Now, as you can see here, this one doesn't have any flowers on it. It is called pistachio. I've had it for 3 years. It's in its 3rd year, and it can take, again, 3 to 5 years for this to get its flowers. Now, on the big leaf hydrangeas, they're always making improvements. So some of the older cultivars, they bloom on old wood, and some of the newer cultivars, they bloom on old wood or new wood. So if you don't know what you have, the best thing to do is to not cut it back the first year and let it come back and kind of see what it does the following year. All right, let's figure out why it's not blooming. So the first thing I asked myself, because these are the ones 9 times out of 10 that people are having problems with not having flowers, are usually the big leaf hydrangeas. So we always ask them, did you cut it back? Okay, yes or no? Don't cut it back and see what it does the next year. Maybe it is going to get its flowers on old wood. So you do that first. So if we have decided the next year that it doesn't get flowers, but you didn't cut it back, that might not be the problem. But if you had been cutting it back and the next year it does get flowers, it's like a, oops, I guess I was cutting the flowers off. So you stop doing that and pop, problem solved. Okay, but now let's say maybe you didn't do that. It could be, again, do you live in too cold of a climate for this big leaf hydrangea? Maybe you are in a zone 4 trying to grow a zone 5 plant. And even in zone 5, they have to be protected. You might have to wrap them in the winter. They really don't want anything below 5 degrees. And zone 5, zone 6, guess what? You guys are hitting -10, -20 on averages. So it might be that you need to wrap this hydrangea. And are you covering it if you're in those zones when you get an unexpected frost in the spring? Are you taking out all the flower buds and that's why you didn't get any flowers? That could be a reason as well. The other thing is, let's say you don't live in a cold climate, but you're not getting flowers. You have deer coming through and grazing on your hydrangea buds, and you'll see the tearing of the leaves or the ripping of the leaves. Is that what's going on with your hydrangeas? So those are some of the different hydrangeas that you can plant, but there are other issues that you can have too. So actually, watering practices can definitely play a role in why you're not getting flowers. If you are consistently letting them dry out in between waterings, that can be a reason why they're not producing flowers. So you want to make sure that you are consistently watering your hydrangeas. Smooth hydrangeas, the Seretts, the big leaf hydrangeas, they want more water than say the Paniculatas or the Oakleaf. That's what I find anyways here at my house. Now, a bonus with your hydrangeas is you can grow them in heavy clay. So you gotta love that about it. All right, so there you have it. You got smooth hydrangeas, Paniculata hydrangeas, your hydrangea serrata or your mountain hydrangea. You've got your Oakleaf hydrangea and then your big leaf hydrangea. Now, all of these I have grown, all of them I love, all of them have pros and cons. I do fertilize all of mine in the spring, and I like to use the Fertilome Garden Special. Now, the reason I like this one is because it's kind of a balanced fertilizer, but it's got a little bit more potassium to help with that flower development. It's got a slow release and a quick release fertilizer to it. It's about a half a cup of fertilizer sprinkled around the base of your shrub for every 3 feet in height. And the other question that we get asked from people is, how do I change the color of the hydrangeas? Now, on a lot of hydrangeas, you can't change the color. There are some that that's the color they are. Paniculatas, for the most part, the color they are is the color they are. The ones that you can change are really some of the big leaf hydrangeas, and even then, like the City Line has one that's red, and you can't change the color on that. It's red. You're gonna do this in the fall, and you have to work lime or sulfur, one or the other, into the soil. So Espoma makes products for this, or you can buy garden lime. It doesn't have to be Espoma, but Espoma has a garden lime bag. Lime is pretty inexpensive, and it's easier to make them pink, and it takes less product than it is to make them blue. So if you're going to try and change your hydrangea to pink or keep it pink, then you're going to work about 1 cup of this into about 10 square feet of soil. And you do need to work it into the soil. You can't just put it on the soil and hope that it works. It is an inert chemical, so you got to work it in and water it in and let it have time to work. Thus, you're going to put it down in the fall, and you're going to use lime to turn them pink. Now, if you're trying to turn them blue, you're going to use sulfur or a soil acidifier. And again, Espoma makes a product for this too. It is harder to turn them blue. Now, if you want to turn them blue, you're going to use about 3 cups per 10 square feet. Work it into the soil. Do it in the fall, water it in, and then just let it do its stuff over the winter. And I have found that trying to turn them blue, it might take you a couple seasons to actually flip the pH of that soil so that you really get the blue that you're looking for. And you have to do it every single year. It's not a one and done. So even if you buy a blue hydrangea, it might not stay blue if your soil isn't acidic enough. You might have to supplement the soil to make that happen. Okay, plant your hydrangeas, okay, in well-drained soil. Now, it can grow in clay, but they got to still drain. Hydrangeas hate sitting in standing water. Your hydrangeas need sun every day. You know, I think a lot of times we think of them as shade plants, but they look and flower their best with at least 4 hours of sun, ideally in the morning, and the Paniculatas need more sun than that. So they can really tolerate more sun in the northern climates. Make sure you give them plenty of water, especially as you're getting them established. They have shallow roots, so they do dry out quickly. You want to make sure you're mulching around the base of them because that's going to help hold that moisture in the ground. All right, everybody, that's a wrap for today's video. I hope that this was helpful and that you learned something about hydrangeas that maybe you didn't know, or it helped you figure out what hydrangea you have, or it helped you figure out what hydrangea you want to have. I know I love them, and I hope that this helped you love them too. I'm Michelle. Thanks for watching. Keep on gardening. We'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.